Hey friends, you are about to check out the newest episode of Strange Mosaic with Tyme Rider, but I wanted to let you all know that this will be the last episode of Strange Mosaic for a while. I am putting it on hiatus, probably temporarily, possibly permanently, so that I can turn all of my attention to focusing on my new series Subultra, which will be rolling out in beta for my patrons over the course of the next 6 to 8 weeks, and then we'll be debuting publicly early in 2026. Um, this has been a transformative show for me. It was the first project I did once Randy and I stopped working together on Off Planet Radio, and it has offered up so many interesting conversations and opened my mind to so many different sort of iterations and understandings of the large overall soup that we all swim in here. But for now, I am ready to move on to some other things. I may come back in the future to cover topics that don't fit into the Sub Ultra series. But for now, that's where my focus is going to go. I will also be continuing most of the series that I work on with other people. But for now, this will be the last Strange Mosaic. Hope you enjoy. Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Emily Moyer, and this is Strange Mosaic. We've got a special guest today. Sometimes the sort of important people to helping you understand your own story and the stories that you have consumed and been absorbed in for the course of your career or maybe even your life are sometimes hiding in unexpected places. In fact, sometimes they're longtime listeners. Our guest has been with us before on Dark Matter, but this is the first time we'll be approaching together her material. Tyme Rider, welcome to Strange Mosaic. It's an honor to have you here.
Thanks, Emily. Very glad to be here today.
Thank you. It's been interesting over the course of the last year, like sort of getting to meet people, who, and some of them with a fairly big social media profile or alternative media profile, and others not, who have been in the audience for a long time, sometimes unbeknownst to me, right? Like when I realized that Mario Garza,
I
Symbolic
know,
Studies,
right?
had been a patron since 2017, that was a shock. And you started interacting a couple of years ago. I didn't realize you had been really with us all that time. And to be honest, and like I'm a little embarrassed about this, like while I've always thought the things you've had to say were interesting and I've enjoyed your comments and your contribution to Dark Matter, like I don't think I really got it until this last set of interactions about how not it was clear to me you understood all this stuff, but how deeply your understanding actually it sort of complements my understanding and how it sort of resonates actually at the sort of same frequency band. Sometimes like when you're busy spewing as much shit out of your mouth as I do, you don't take enough time to like really listen.
Sure.
And the other thing that's been interesting, so like some of the comments you've left recently really landed. I actually realized when I was going back and listening to some of your work yesterday that one of the names of your episodes was the name of a recent episode I did with Nish that was actually about a similar thing. And I didn't know you had titled your episode, That's Me in the Corner, right? Like
Oh, yep,
I
yep.
didn't, and right. I didn't know that at all, and so I almost titled the next episode "That's Me in the Spotlight," but we just some different things went on the show, so I shifted that title. So our mind is sort of doing very similar
Yeah.
things with information, but it just for some reason it's landing with me in a different way that I really appreciate. And I went back and listened to some of your series that we'll be talking a little bit about today. We're not going to get into a deep analysis of the content of the series
Right, right.
today,
Yeah.
but I would like to. It really landed differently for me. I also like one thing I've been doing this year just because of the nature of my work is I've been listening to more podcasts in earphones as opposed to just like on the computer or on my phone open.
Sure.
And it's a little bit more intimate, right? Like
Yeah, the
it's
intimacy
a
of it.
different, it's hitting me
Yep.
differently. And so I was in the middle of like thousands and thousands of people yesterday, but listening to to you and Donald Marshall talk right in the earphones, and it was very interesting experience. So I'm excited to
That's
get
cool.
into all of this with you today.
Very
I know, Yeah, I mean, I know from interacting with you that the Donald Marshall material was highly influential on you, and
Yes.
in fact, we talked about it a little bit. Nish and I did in I think
Mhm.
episode 6 of season 8,
Yes.
when we talked about cloning. For people who haven't seen season 8 of the series I do with Nish called Just the Three of Us, if what we talk about here today resonates for you, I highly recommend you go check out that
Yes.
series. There's like free week available on Patreon, free month available on Locals. There's 7 episodes to that series, and I've known that about you for a long time. I also was affected. I don't know how much I was influenced by Donald Marshall, but I would say I was affected by Donald
Sure.
Marshall at the same. I was aware of him in the same timing as you, but I stopped listening long before you stopped sort of paying attention.
Right.
And I do look forward to diving into some of that content and minutia with you sometime. But what I really wanted to talk to you about today stemmed from a comment you wrote on Patreon, from one of my episodes that I did with Nish.
Yes.
And so, if you don't mind, I'm going to read the comment,
Oh,
and
go for it.
then we can kind of jump into what I wanted to talk about here today. So
Sounds
let me do that. Let me pull that
okay.
up here real fast. Okay, here we go.
Okay.
So, man, you are correct. That's what I'll call what I'll call the mainstream truth or take on cloning is intractable and restricted to, quote, these experiences are only happening in physical cloning centers. I could not believe the pushback I received from the folks in the, quote, cloning center only trenches after I did my Donald Marshall series. I've been invited on, I think, 9 different shows by 4 different content creators to discuss the Donald Marshall material over the last year since I put it out. And for the most part, the hosts were open to what I was saying, but the entrenched Donald Marshall army of cloning center groupies listening do not want to hear what I kept saying in those interviews, which is that the majority of experiences are much more accounted for by what I call a multiverse, multiplex consciousness experience versus we are all sitting in a dumb somewhere. That is not to say those experiences don't exist, because I have memories of that as well, including ones with Donald Marshall that I've never discussed publicly. Those are important to me and meaningful, and that is one of the reasons I did the series. But the overarching goal of my series was to use the Donald Marshall material as a springboard to introduce folks to the idea of what our consciousness really is, and that we are in a type of multiplex, multi theater, whereby we are both the projector and the screen, and all the variable probabilities on the E8 lattice and higher. These memories we all have are more likely attributable to this versus an actual place, although that happens too. I was always careful to validate that those happen as well, as I too remember the dirt floor. There's some very painful, scary, and nasty shit that I recall, and some very, oddly in retrospect now, loving and caring moments that happened in that space. In my opinion, only roughly 4 to 12% of the situations that I have memories of likely occurred in an actual dumb cloning center. The majority is in some kind of mixed media temporal bubble where it feels real, but it's more likely I'm orthogonally in a different spatial dimension with time frozen versus a physical cloning center. I have many personal examples of why I feel this to be true. The DM army around him do not want to hear this. Somehow they feel that if these experiences are not discussed as happening in actual physical clones and actual dumbs, then it is making them less relevant. Or that I am against Donnie, which is illogical, right? I just did a long series on the guy. They do not want to discuss even the basics of agreed upon mainstream quantum mechanics and physics that could help explain our experiences. And more importantly, in my opinion, the realm we reside in. They want to continue to share videos from Donald Marshall from 2014. This is a very limited strategy at this point. I tried to get creative, to make inroads to this group, to no avail. When I was invited to various interviews, I tried to explain our situation in multiple different ways. For example, in one I talked about it like when we are flipping between versions of ourselves and we are concurrently present in differing stub timelines, like in the Peripheral series. In another pod, I explained how I believe our consciousness, once we hit REM, is in superposition. So when dreaming, we are temporarily present for a multiplex experience once we hit REM. This is demonstrated via the drug that is taken that subdues the brain's executor function in Dark Matter, the Apple TV series. This availability for superposition also happens in other cases. Near-death experiences, for example, extreme trauma situations, situations where we are triggered with flashbacks of trauma, and with, as you say so eloquently, sound, vibration, and drugs. I am 100% in agreement with your take on drugs. My obsession with my drug of choice over the years has had a lot to do with the doors it opened for me perceptually. It's been somewhat of a bummer, to be honest, to spend so much time, effort putting out that long series only to have it stonewalled by that group. New people to the material almost universally were positive in messages, but the old school cloning center types were offended by my attempt to bridge to real science. I am attempting to use Donald Marshall's experience as a platform to discuss the realm we live in and what our consciousness truly is. My efforts to explain his experience in a more scientific manner have not been welcomed by that group. In my opinion, in this discussion, you guys nailed the truth of the matter. I wish more folks interested in the topic of cloning would be open to this material. The fact that clones exist and dumbs exist is only the very beginning of the story that has many chapters. I'm glad you guys did this show because it is the kind of conversation which pushes the stagnant narrative forward. P.S. Do you remember that old website, twinstrangers.net, like from 2017? It was, in my opinion at the time, soft disclosure on how, just like you said, we don't need to be limited to be thinking just about clones as being down in the cloning centers. There's multiple versions of us here and now, in this space and place. The people who found each other on that website demonstrated a more live action version of what would be shown to us approximately 6 years later, and they cloned Tyrone. P.S. P.S. It's ironic you mentioned the intersection between the vril parasite and the cephalopods. In the current show on Hulu, Alien Earth, they have presented a new type of alien, a T. ocellus, which appears physically to look like a multifaceted eyeball mounted on tentacles. It parasites a host exactly in the manner the vril do, in that it completely takes over the consciousness and physical functioning of the host. It puppets the body it inhabits, just like the vril. However, unlike the vril, which take over the host's optic nerve cavity, in the case of the T. ocellus, it is a type of flatworm with tentacles that parasites the host by burrowing directly into the eye. Then it borrows the host's eye socket and latches internally to the brain in order to see. While not a cephalopod, it is literally a creature with tentacles that parasites both a human and a sheep and a cat. I forgot about the cat in the series. It has intelligence and is a mastermind of other aliens, of which the usual xenomorph of alien fame is afraid of it. I turned this series on a few weeks ago just as a palate cleanse, only to find them in the first episode showing a synthetic human looking upgraded super bodies having dying children's consciousness transferred into them so they may live on. B, hybrid human cyborgs. C, fully synthetic human looking beings with fully AI consciousness. And D, these intriguing four new aliens, one of which is soft disclosure of the vril droning process. My apologies for the long post. I haven't had much time to post in about a year and a half, so felt maybe a long one wouldn't be too much. Thanks for reading. Looking forward to your MK Ultra series. Cheers. Okay, so that was a fantastic comment. Obviously, for those of you who listen, we're going to talk, her series. She has a fantastic and criminally underviewed series on Rumble, titled Revisit. What's the exact title? Revisiting Donald Marshall through a psychological analysis.
Of let's see, a psychological analysis of a soul, I think. I don't know where it ended.
Okay. It's basically taking a look at Donald Marshall's
Yeah.
story through the content of the songs he claims to have written and psychologically analyzing those lyrics to A, determine if they were all written by the same person, and B, determine what was happening to the soul that produced this content.
Yes.
Right. I've listened to about 4 hours of it. I will listen to the rest of it. What's so interesting is I think it really tells us a lot more about you than it actually tells us about Donald Marshall. So I know you said it wasn't about you and it was about Donald, but in some ways, and probably more importantly, it is about you.
Yeah.
And
Well,
so
that's funny you would say that. We'll get to that. But that's something that I found quite startling to my own, that somehow it was about me. But we'll get there.
So we're talking about, Donald Marshall and just the overall topic of cloning and the technologies purported to be involved in that phenomena. I call these things phenomena. I consider the things like targeting of individuals and cloning centers and things like that to be almost similar to a psychedelic experience, right?
Yeah.
And I see them more as phenomena or experiences to be understood rather than some action to be stopped for
Right.
myself and my perception.
Yeah.
But for let's do this. Like, why did you do this?
Mhm.
And let's start with the why you did this, and then the what happened when you did it. And
Okay.
then we'll get into later in the conversation what you would have liked to have had happen and where you wanted things to lead. How does that sound? Take us away.
Okay. So the, why does anybody do anything? It's fairly complicated, so but I'll try to like pull the different threads together. So when the Donald Marshall material came kind of across YouTube back in the wild, wild west, when YouTube was a little bit less censored, or a lot less censored, I had begun waking up back in 1998 when I was getting during my master's degree, and I was sort of, I don't know, disillusioned with sort of academia and the process. And I ultimately continued on in the process, but started doing my own sort of research on the side. And so by the time the Donald Marshall stuff hit my awareness, I had kind of been doing truthing or reality junkying or whatever we want to call it for, somewhere 13, 15 years or something. So what Donnie was saying was not like just so earth-shattering that
It
I
wasn't
couldn't.
new. It wasn't new if
Yeah,
you've been paying attention to that
yeah.
material. Yeah.
There had been other people saying similar things in different ways, but the way, well, first off, when he started talking about the experience of the cloning center and consciousness transfer, a lot of um, a lot of pieces fell together for me in terms of things that I had experienced throughout my lifetime before, during what I would call dreams or nighttime adventuring or whatever we would want to call it. I had also have had a number of experiences during waking time, but when he started talking about this, there were so many things that were analogous or correlational to things that had happened to me that I couldn't explain, had no framework or context for, that I was so shocked. I sat there for his first interview that I watched, which was the Benny Eastwood one, I believe, and I was like, physically, psychologically, emotionally, not upset. I didn't have like this negative reaction, but I was vibrating. I could really, really feel, I really resonated with it. So I, just like all of us back then, and probably even now, I suppose, if we find a content creator that we're interested in, you consume all the content that they have available. So I started following his interviews, and back then they were few and far between. There wasn't much, and there really didn't end up being much. I believe he probably did maybe 10 total, 10 across maybe 5 or 6 years. But what he did do is start a pro boards in which he typed every day. And I started following that and reading it, and it's turned into, it's a huge pro boards now. There's thousands of entries, and Don doesn't post there anymore. At least I don't believe he does. But people who follow him place other content there that he's done, like on social media. But I started following Donnie back, like I said in the interview, 2013. And I started reading, and I just never stopped. I mean, it was one thread that, you know how it is. We pick up a thread and we listen to someone for a while, and then it becomes kind of a cul-de-sac. We're like, okay, I got what I'm going to get out of this, and I feel there's, and a lot of these content creators are cul-de-sacking for a reason. They're paid to do so, and we've learned that over the years. We've all had our moment of like, fuck, this is somebody who's clearly purposefully not taking this narrative any farther. So, you move on. Well, I never quote moved on from the Donald Marshall material, in that I truly believed that what I was hearing was his truth, that he was telling the truth as he believed it, and that it resonated with truths that I knew that were relational to something that had happened with me. And the extra layer on top of that is trained as a clinical psychologist. I pay very close attention to people's introverbals, the way they speak, the way they phrase their words, the way they look at the world, their worldview. And as far back as 2015, I started noticing these trends or narratives or threads in the Donald Marshall music, the music that he had claimed that he had written. And he wrote a lot more on the pro boards about these songs than he ever talked about in interviews. Because you probably remember this, a lot of the interviewers would get triggered by uh, the topic
Yeah.
and shut him down. Like, well, so you wrote Metallica and you wrote like Gaga and like they a lot of them would get really condescending, as if musical geniuses don't actually exist. Like I understand the skepticism, but we have data points even in our own lives, even people that I've known who can sit down at a piano and create music and just sing and create like a little ditty, a little song, blah blah blah, just right off the cuff. And we've known that there are people historically, at least in our narratives, our Beethovens, our Mozarts, or just look on Instagram. There are children right now whose parents, unfortunately, are click farming their children. Or maybe not, maybe that's harsh, but putting them, look, my kid, he creates music, whatever. So there are people who are musical geniuses, and there are people who are creative geniuses, who are writers, who are dancers, I mean, artists are by and large, they're creative. And, I always found it a little weird, the pushback, until I realized that what they weren't really pushing back is not that he couldn't be a musical genius. It's just the sheer volume of the music. And then you add on some of the other layers of it, and then you include some of the more abrasive parts of his personality, and people just instinctively pushed away. So back to the music. Even as back as far as 2015, I started hearing what I call Donnieisms in different songs, little threads that I could pull. And I think I started, Emily, thinking about this project probably almost, I mean, literally 10 years ago. I started creating it sort of in my head. And I kept waiting for someone else to do it. And someone did, one of his followers named Aldo, a voice from the underground, I believe is his channel. He created a couple of videos in which he put some of the more popular songs together. And it's more of a, hey, Donald Marshall wrote these songs, couple of videos. They're very good. They were made years ago, but they're good, But it didn't have it didn't,
Psychological analysis. Yeah.
yeah, it didn't have and then I realized it was sort of my husband who said to me, because I was kind of, complaining about it a few years ago. Like, I was like, I wish somebody would, you know, revitalize the Donald Marshall material, because there are so many hidden gems
Mhm.
in the material that we could use as a platform to help newbies to this material understand, and also those of us who have been around a long time, to further flesh out some of these ideas about the realm we're in, about what is the true nature of our consciousness. I mean, he had all of these things in the middle of the, hey, I wrote the songs narrative, that we could pull through, that none of the
Even if the like this, and this is what I felt then, this is what I feel now, and this is what almost everyone who I know who've had similar experiences and who I respect says to this day. Even
okay.
if everything he says about the music is untrue, the understanding that he displayed for the vibe of the locations and
Yeah.
the nature of, in some cases, the technology, in other cases, the alchemy or the magical sorcery practices that were being
Yes,
used, speaks to someone who experienced them,
he
right?
did. Yeah.
So even if
Yep.
even if and I don't tend towards Donald Marshall as lying about the music. I tend towards Donald Marshall is misunderstanding his experience. It's funny as you're talking today. I never thought about this before, but and their personalities are totally different. But he's kind of like Andrew Basiago, right? You know who Andrew
Yeah.
Basiago is,
Oh yeah. Actually, I got my thoughts about Andrew
right? In
Chicago, but
terms
yeah,
of, I
yeah,
believe both of them are
that's
telling the
great.
truth. They're
Yeah.
telling the truth as they believe that
Yes.
they experienced it.
Yep.
This comes down to like a perception thing. And it's like almost like, like when you have like witnesses give recall evidence from
Yeah.
things
Different
like,
Yeah.
right. So,
Yep.
so like, I think they're telling the truth that they believe happened to them. And if you don't understand like the entirety of what's going on, if you're only seeing like,
Yes.
if you're watching the stage show from the front and you can't see that there's like a stage or a curtain, that there's people in the back pulling things, you're going to
Right.
think, right? In that sense, I always felt like he was reporting what he believed happened,
Yes.
just like I believe the same about Andrew Basiago.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, and my opinion doesn't make me correct or them wrong.
No,
It's
no,
just that there are other explanations that for what they believe they experienced that
yeah.
could not only validate like the important points of the content that they're saying, but
Right.
also be important because it would make it about all of us instead of just about them,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And that was the like this was one of the things that I had to learn because I was listening. I think part of I was very put off, and even though I felt everything I told you just now, like I felt he was telling the truth. There was things he
Good.
said that like were such weird little descriptions of
Yeah.
oddities that like, oh, I never even told anybody that. So
Right.
how, right? Like
Yeah.
he
How
couldn't
would
have
he
even
know that?
stolen the idea from me or
Right.
something, right? Like that.
Right.
And the thing that sort of put me off to him was just the how so much of it centered around specifically him and
Yeah.
like all of these things that he didn't get credit for and stuff like that. As I was during that period of time, I remember like he came out in 2011. I had just moved into the apartment downtown. I was there till 2013. I think probably sometime 2013 or 2014 was kind of like when I was done listening to him. And so there's part of me that probably felt like I was rejecting things about him because it reminded me of me,
Ah.
because some of the things that I was hearing him say sound like things that I was thinking or things that I was sharing with one or two like very
Sure.
close people,
Right.
but like not, I wasn't sharing them from the sense that like, I'm sure that this is what is happening. I was sharing them more from this is what it seems like is happening.
Right.
And I was trying to, something in my being was always warning me not to get carried away with myself, right? To not, to even though,
Wow.
even when it most specifically feels like it is exactly about me or I'm the one doing it or something like that, I always felt like that was something or someone trying to trick me into allowing my ego to run wild. And so, even when I would be in situations where there was an opportunity almost to prove that, I would tend to back away from it and just be like, like I'm not going to go there. And
Mm-hmm.
and so because I was doing that, and we have personality differences, and all kinds of things are different between Donald and I. So sometimes when you're going through a thing, and you see someone else going through a thing, and you're handling it one way, you see someone else handling it the other way, you're put off by that more than you
Sure.
would be if you weren't a person also going through something similar. And then the
Yes.
other thing, and I think this might be the biggest thing, okay,
Okay.
is that I actually did grow up in Hollywood, and I actually was in movies and on
Yep.
sets and surrounded with famous people in my
Yeah.
waking life.
Yep.
And I completely understood how you can make someone feel like something is really happening when it's not really happening, or how not only are you, when you are a performer, trying to fool the audience, but the way that the reality is set up for the performer fools the performer into thinking that they're something different
Oh
than they
yeah.
are as
They fool
well.
themselves. Yeah.
So I had an understanding of stagecraft that always made me be like, wait a second, Emily, be careful. Don't get out over your skis with claims, which is part of why you never saw me on the internet until I had kind of resolved what some of that stuff was. I knew not to get out there making bold
Right.
claims because it
Yeah.
would hurt any legitimacy that I would have later as I tried to really figure it out. And once I got to a place where like I was more interested in the phenomena than I was about the fact that it had happened to me,
Right.
then I was ready to start speaking publicly, you know. And for me,
Yeah.
that came with sobriety from drugs,
Right.
right? I mean, I drink alcohol. I occasionally do psychedelics, but for 15 years, I was a regular hard drug user. And
Yes.
so for me, it was very clear to me also that whether he acknowledges it or not, that Donald was also a drug user,
Oh,
and,
yeah. He
right?
is. Yeah. He
And,
acknowledges it. Yeah.
yeah, okay. That he was
Yeah.
also a drug user, and that
He's
that
an
really
alcoholic. Yeah. Big time.
that
Just the
really
other day.
skews the lens of
Yeah.
perception, right?
Yeah.
Things that are
Yeah.
happening in general when you're on drugs, they're happening to you. When things that
Yeah.
are about something else or become about you, you know. And
Yeah.
so I could always tell, and in sometimes it was comforting to me, and sometimes it was a put off that he was also on drugs and probably likely often the same drugs that I was on, right? But
Yeah.
I also
Probably.
know
Yeah.
that like those drugs are a portal into those spaces that you're trying to remember from when you were a kid. And
Yeah.
it
Oh,
gives
yeah.
you this ability to sort of like that's been like for
Yeah.
me, I have to work a lot harder to remember and understand things now in sobriety than I did. Like when I was on drugs, when I was on meth every day, it was literally like just pulling a looking glass up to my eye and like
Yeah.
looking back, right? Like
Oh,
looking
yeah.
back into what had happened or looking into the future as to what might happen there. There's a reason why one name for methamphetamines is glass.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
cleansing effect. Yeah.
right?
100%. Yep.
So for me, um, like some of the things that put me off about Donald Marshall probably were just fearful about, well, am I like that? I don't want to sound like this fucking,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
But
It's,
at the same
yeah.
time, I knew he was
Oh,
telling the
it's
truth,
true.
his truth,
It
right?
is. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, you know, I, I like how you describe how careful you were when you took your own self out into the internet. You weren't careless with it. You were aware how you could function on other people, and so you wanted to be in sobriety before you did that. And Donnie is not in sobriety. Donnie is, drinking to this day. He often, just the other day, he posted about being an alcoholic and drinking. Yeah, those kinds of things have put a lot of people off. Um, I tried to address that in my series in the best way I could because I want to help people understand that in his case that what has happened to him has made him extraordinarily myopic, which,
Mhm.
you know, um, being a victim of abuse of any kind, sexual abuse, physical abuse, etc., it could make the room very small in
Yep.
terms of mentally. It could
Yeah.
be make everything and make it very myopic and very because you're always in survival mode. It's the limbic system. You're always like, and in Donnie's case, I do believe consciousnesses can be transferred, like this is what I would do back, 11, 12 years ago when I was trying to, I would often also be reactive to the way he was acting, the information, and I would have to start at, okay, what do I believe he's saying to be true? Like what, like an onion, like, and I would build out. I would be like, okay, do I think that there's something like a bio-mind that can be transferred? And because of my own experiences that I had had, I did believe that he was telling the truth about that because I had my own experiences where I have waking and very vivid memory of situations like that happening to me throughout my life. So I would be like, okay, consciousness transfer is possible. And then he would talk about how they can stop time or they can create like a temporal bubble or a back room where time stops and it's not really another dimension, but you can think of it that way, like I was saying, orthogonally, that your body's in bed in REM, but your consciousness is over in this other space and place where time that we are normally living in a linear way has been stopped. So our consciousness is having an experience. And then did I think that it's memory wipeable? Well, yes, because some of my stuff was memory wiped, and I would know that because I would remember to a certain point, and then it was gone.
I think the evidence for that is that like we have dreams, we know we have them, we can't remember
Yep,
them, or we remember them for 1 second when we come back in, and
yep,
then we can't. No matter how, like I sometimes when I'm dreaming, like I become aware that I'm dreaming right at the end
yep,
of the dream because I feel
yep,
myself heading home, and I
yep.
say to myself, "Okay, you're going. Remember, remember, remember,
Right.
remember," and
Yep,
then
yep,
I go in and I'm like, "Fuck, I
right.
forgot." So the
Yep.
fact, right, like that, like that we have for some of us an almost everyday example
Yeah.
of that
Yes.
means that
100.
all that would have to be, it doesn't have to be some like crazy complex new thing. It's just
Yep.
finding a way to mimic what happens with people with dreams. You're in
Yep.
one state, it feels
Yep.
real.
Yep.
Suddenly the states switch, and even though it felt so real, suddenly it's almost
Suddenly,
impossible to remember, right? So like that seems to me like not a far stretch that, every person who's been interested in psychology or the psyche
yep.
or like any of the content of mind or anything since the beginning of time would have been looking
Yep.
to understand and to replicate.
Exactly. And to understand how memory works and how false memories can be recreated or how we can be like under extreme trauma, we don't remember certain things. Like
Or
even some,
they're outsized, right? Sometimes
yeah,
like I don't
or they're over. Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
when I was it was so interesting as I did the last season with Nish when I was going back and like revisiting how my awareness came to certain topics, like something that seemed to me like this enormous thing was like one line in a 500-page book,
Oh, wow. Yeah.
right? And then
Yeah.
499 of the other pages in the book I had no memory of. But when I
Yeah.
look at where my material has gone, a lot of that type kind of information was actually covered in great detail in this book, and I
Interesting.
didn't remember that at all, right?
Right.
And so like whatever information we're consuming meets where we're at in our own consciousness at that time,
Yep.
and that is like a
Like
our
a magic
consciousness is like a
key.
kaleidoscope, or like if you look at obviously I'm a fan of electronic music, and I
Yeah.
love to always go and look at like the DJ setup when I go to a
Oh,
party. I
cool.
like to look obviously how many turntables are they playing on? What mixer are they using? What other sort of effects or drum machines or programs on their computer are they using? And how are they putting it together? And a lot like when you're describing in one of the episodes how the green red on and off switch for
Right.
people's like REM and to tell
Yes.
who's in REM and can we conscious
Yes.
transfer, like a lot of that description sounds a lot like the mixing board, and the DJ is
Yep.
bringing in sounds, pulling out
Yep.
sounds, highlight, causing distortion,
Yep.
doing this and that, and all of that stuff is lit up when you're in the dark room, and it
Yep.
does look like they're like an alien controlling their spaceship, riding through
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
multiverse, causing people to think this is happening or think that is happening, but all they're doing is removing some things from reality and
Right.
emphasizing others,
Right.
right? All the stuff is still there. You're just only paying attention to the sounds they want you to pay attention to,
Which
right?
is all of reality, really, when you look
Totally,
at it. I mean,
right? I mean,
it's
it's not
every,
going to surprise me if we find out that God is a DJ.
yeah. I mean, well, I think God is way more technological than maybe people want to hear me say, but I truly believe that AI, the way we look at it, has been here all along. Whatever, there's no, it's like in what Donnie said in Who Made Who in 1990 in the AC/DC lyrics, if you made them and they made you, who picked up the bill when who made who? I
Right.
mean, it's, if we made them, well, we made AI, but did they, AI has been around a very long time. It's just been hidden from us in terms of it's not been a part of our day-to-day part of our realm. But yeah, yeah, the Donald Marshall material, um, because I have been paying attention to it and watching it over the years, I really have noticed exactly what you're talking about, that people do have strong reactions and
Mhm.
resonate, pretty strongly. Um, Part of that is, Donnie gets in these interpersonal scuffles with people. He has picked up a lot of habits from interacting at whatever level he is with some of the controllers of this realm. The He likes to pick on people. He likes to be he's very much the most dialectic person that I could describe. In many ways, Donald Marshall is an extreme example of a lot of things. And one is he has an extreme amount of empathy. It's hard to really explain how deeply he does care, but it's also housed in a person who comes off as not giving a fuck at all and who is
It reminds me of Tyler Durden in Fight
yeah,
Club.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great metaphor. He comes off as very caustic, abrasive.
Right, literally like lie cooking, making soap in that, right, in the half hours, right, a very
Yeah,
cost. Yeah.
it's and you know, well, everyone, not just people in the truth movement, but let's try to imagine for a minute that we're baby truthers. We're back beginning to learn that, oh, guess what? Reality isn't so real or whatever. And we come across the Donald Marshall material and his personality and the fact that he was openly drunk, like on the Paranormal Central
Mhm.
interviews, he was loaded on both of them, especially the second one. I mean, him and
Which actually sort of makes the best case for him as a rock star of anything on
Greg.
some level, yes.
Well, yeah, I mean he's definitely the metaphor of a tortured artist. I mean, the Van Gogh who cut off his ear. I mean, he checks all the boxes,
Right.
but yet people, like him and Greg Carlwood got into, I mean, he gets into these, you know, and with his followers, the people around him, they have moments that are up and down too. So like all people, when we love people who are like a porcupine, people who, I mean, are difficult to love, Donald Marshall is telling his truth, and some of the things he has to say are difficult to hear, and there are parts of his personality that make him difficult to want to embrace. And so that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do the series that I did. I wanted to somehow help people leapfrog over some of these barriers and try to hear with the ear that I was hearing that point of view, that sense of self, that personality that is very clearly the same person speaking all the way through the decades. And when you listen, I don't know how many songs I put in it. It's probably over 60.
It's a lot of songs.
It's a lot of
Yeah.
music and I curated that motherfucker like that. I took like a year and a half thinking exactly because I had different points to make about different parts of his adolescence and his adulthood, and I could really tell as he was growing up what he was going through because he would sing about it. Um, I I wanted to help people be able to relate with the material because he is telling the truth that this type of technology it does exist and our consciousness um, it's a tangible object. It is biologically an object that can be transferred and not just during REM. They have technology even when we're waking, which
Oh,
we
there's all kinds of shit. Like I've
yes,
had the experience before, like naturally. Not I'm not saying that somebody was doing something I didn't want them to do, but
sure,
dancing next to somebody, right?
okay,
Not talking all night long, when you finally go to say something, like starting to say something that is not, it's not like, oh, hi, how are you? Or this was a great set. Some very specific thing you were thinking, you
right.
say it, and then they fucking finish the sentence. And it was like a very obscure
That's
thought.
cool.
So
Yeah,
obviously, when you come into resonance, then you
Yes.
begin to be able to share a mind. I've also had the experience of
Yes.
like noticing both acutely, like specifically over the course of a few hours, like a temporary instance, but then also over the course of years, that people that spend a lot of time in vibrational resonance with each other actually begin to look like one another.
They
Like that
do.
our DNA begins to talk, right? Our
Yes.
cells begin to
Right.
vibrate in similar patterns that actually transfigure what we look like,
Yep.
right? Short term, like
Yep.
I've seen weird stuff very short term, like momentary, but then over the course of the length of time that I've known somebody, realizing that like when I first met them, we didn't really look anything alike, and
Right.
now like,
But
somehow
now,
weirdly we look kind of alike,
right.
right? Even though they're Mexican and Chinese, and I'm German and Jewish, and whatever it
Right.
is,
Right. Right.
right? Like,
Right.
you know, so
That's cool. Yep.
so there is something that happens when people are in vibrational resonance with each other. And I
Yes.
do not mean the new age thing. I do not
No, I
mean
know.
raising your vibration, or I what I mean is being vibrated on a literal like cymatics
Yep.
vibrational
Yep.
shaking, kind of scenario,
It's
and
all
and
place.
being
Yes.
shaped and
Yes.
formed by the same geometry. And
Yes.
right, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Yes. But I mean, and even the declassified, like the Gateway Project and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I mean, the Sabrina Wallace stuff, it's the Merkaba stuff. It's everywhere if you want to look. We do have a biofield around us. It is it comes into resonance with others. And so a lot of these things that Donnie was saying are true. They are a truism. And I Donnie did write a great deal of music that has been the backdrop of our culture. I'm just saying this is the truth. He did. And um I know that people have a hard time with that for all kinds of different reasons. But it in a way I understand that, but in a way, I mean, we are all used in different ways.
Mhm.
I mean, they, like you've said before, they crowdsource us for ideas. They're constantly energy harvesting us for different reasons, like not just individually. I mean, to push the entire narrative of the entire realm. So it doesn't surprise me at all that they take things that are individually creative about different individuals and use that. Donnie is special in that way that he writes music, but he's not special in the way that he's just one of hundreds of thousands of people across time that have been, used or manipulated or whatever, by other humans. We don't even have to go to entities. We don't have to go crazy and woo
Correct.
here.
Yes, right. All the
I mean,
nastiest things I've met so far in this reality are all people.
I mean,
Right.
it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, just look at, your average record producer. I mean,
Right.
obviously they're using people, they're forcing their clients to sleep with them, I mean, this shit is not some kind of, it's not hard for me to believe that the music industry is as much of a lie. I mean, why is it so hard for people? People will believe Tartaria and flat Earth and Mandela and all
Right.
this other stuff, but
Because
no,
it's not specific to them. People have, right, like
yeah,
the cult. It like, okay, there's like religious people like a cult of personality, like around a leader, and all of this stuff is available in all of these online communities as well. But like the
true.
thing about Tartaria and flat Earth and all of that kind of stuff is it's an idea about the external reality. It is
Yeah,
not about the
yeah.
individual specifically. And I think that like most people are more comfortable talking about that than about somebody's
Oh yeah.
specific claims about an individual. Uh,
Yep.
Let me throw
What?
this idea by you. I want to save like the deep analysis of like the songs and the specific issues about Donald Marshall for another time. But this is what, as I was listening yesterday, kind of occurred to me. And,
Sure.
and I came home and I shared it with Laura. And then funny, this morning, something came up in her feed that was like an example of what I was talking about that I don't, when I say that I was like making it up, I'm sure other people have had these ideas or thoughts before, but like I
Yeah.
was not getting this idea from someone else, right?
Got it.
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Is that, what if he wasn't writing the songs in the way we normally think? Like, not in the way that like Dolly Parton writes songs. Obviously, she hasn't run out of ideas. Like, she can just observe any scenario and make a song about it. Like, she is through and through a songwriter,
Extremely creative.
right?
Very.
Through and
Yes.
through a songwriter. Okay. And I do believe that she has
Oh,
written
yeah.
all of
I
those
agree.
songs. Okay. I think what may have been happening for Donnie, and again, just my thoughts, not doesn't make me right, is that he was a gifted traveler and he was bringing songs back from other levels of the realm.
Mm.
This
That's
is
the
actually what I think pop music is. It's people like, and this is why you have these very charismatic pop stars, right? That kind of, whether they're the ones who write the songs or just sing the songs or whatever it is. I
right.
think almost all music, and by music, I don't mean the lyrics, I mean like the whole thing, like the tune, the catch, the whatever,
Right.
is remembered. It is found. It is, you hear something and it reminds you of something. And so you grab onto it and like want to recreate it. I
Yeah.
think the perpetrators of our reality, I don't even know that I want to call them controllers per se.
Right.
They understand this and they understand that like there's all of these other like realms out there. Some of them are very close. They're all right here. They're not like super duper far
Yep.
away.
Yep.
There's like all these different like radio stations on the radio.
Slices in bread.
Some people can tune into them. Like,
Yep.
some of them are very obvious and almost everyone can tune in. Others are a little farther out there and it takes a special soul to travel to that frequency
Yep.
band or to be able to cope,
Right.
to remember what they heard when they're there. And
Right.
then when you come back, that's kind of like all they remember from the thing. It's like there was this tune, and right, they may have heard like someone playing something, and so they heard the tune, and they're like, maybe even the words that they're making up for are not exactly the ones that were said. Like, when you were little and you would hear a pop song, you would think that like the lyrics you would hear were different than what was actually the lyrics. Like, it
Yeah.
sounded like something else,
Yes. Yes.
right?
A lot. Yeah.
And like, and I think that might have also and also that happened more when I was little than when I got older, because when I
Yeah.
was little I had less vocabulary
Yes.
and so I had less words to pick from. So if it sounded like this word, it was that word, and that might also explain some of the simplistic language of some of Donnie's songs. Is
Maybe.
he
Yeah.
was traveling somewhere and he heard this, and when I say it doesn't even have to be that like he was in a fucking jazz club and heard this it could literally even be that like just the place that he was, that was sort of the vibration of the aura of that place, right? When I first started hearing electronic music, I liked it immediately, but it wasn't until when I heard techno, I'm like, oh, this is different. This sounds to me like where I'm from. I have been trying to remember this my whole life. And whenever I hear a track that I like, it's not, oh, this is an interesting new track. It's like, oh my God, thank God, I've been waiting to hear this sound for 5 million years, right? Like,
Oh,
that
that's
kind of
cool.
thing. So
Yeah.
I think what's possible is that Donnie is, a gifted traveler, whether that is like literally a temporal or dimensional traveler, or more like a lucid dreamer, like kind of person like Birdie, my friend Birdie, who I have on
Yeah.
the show,
He's awesome.
right?
Yeah.
And that he is able to grab way more content from his experiences than the average person. And so he comes back with this like tune in his head.
Yep.
And right, and then he's kind of like doing that. Now, I know from my own experiences, both in my waking life and in the underground, which I refer to the underground as both the project stuff and like strange experiences I've had at parties and things like that,
Right.
that there is this desire from some people for certain individuals to perform on command. Right?
Yeah.
Like, people used to be like, oh, breakdance, do that, because I had this like
I'll
unique
bet.
move.
Yeah.
And everybody just wanted me to do that. Sometimes I was in the mood to do it. Sometimes whatever it is.
Not
But the
feeling it.
reason that they liked that move is because it was kind of an otherworldly move. It was obvious
Yeah.
that move was not really from
Special.
you, right?
Yep.
And so like that, they wanted to see it. Do it again, do it again, do it again. Just like
Yeah.
when Simone Biles does the triple pike, everyone wants to see it because it's
Yeah.
obviously she's in
Yeah.
a fucking another reality
Yep.
that she's
She
doing it,
is.
right? Even though like there's other things that lots of other gymnasts do that are actually equally as hard, but you can't tell from watching them how hard they are because they're not taking you to somewhere that you can't go, right? It's like a different kind of skill.
Like Carlitos in those amazing volleys.
100%, right? There's something different.
Touch.
Like he's
Yep.
moved. He is a time
Yep.
traveler. Like I think
He
what
is. Yeah.
he like what the special thing about him, and some people would call this just he has great anticipation. No, Federer had great anticipation.
Yeah.
Carlos, like you literally, he's here and then he's here. He
I
didn't
know.
run all that way, even though they'll talk about how fast he is. He is fast, but you'll lose him for a second. He's gone,
He,
he's there.
he's
He's
bound.
poking through.
I tell my husband that he has, I'm like, Carlos is doing the bouncy bouncy thing again. He like hippity hippity hoppity skippity hippity, and he's all over the place. And suddenly there's this amazing touch volley, and he's like grinning again, like, gotcha. You
Right?
know,
Like, well, he's able to like
yeah,
shrink spatial dimensions.
yeah,
He's able to
bending. Yep.
bending time, and
Yep.
he's
I-
doing all kinds of stuff, right?
Well, what,
And I'm sure if we slowed the camera down too, thered also be points where he's not there. We would see that he's
oh
actually
yeah,
not there, and then he's back.
absolutely. That's why he baffles some people. That's
Yeah,
why yesterday, did you watch him play Alex de Minaur?
I
When
watched
he
a little bit of it. Yeah,
like, did you see the couple times where Demon was just standing there like, what the fuck just happened? And Demon was everywhere.
yeah.
He's fast.
He's just as fast as Carlos
He's
is.
just
Yeah,
as fast, but he
yeah.
doesn't have that special
Mm-mm.
whatever.
Mm-mm.
And it was very apparent. But anyway, not to get off on tennis, but yeah, that you're what you're talking about, that special Simone Biles thing that Carlos has. Um, even the what we would call the elite or whatever, Donnie has talked about that what I call the they, because I don't know what else to call them, they have said what you're saying
They're
right now.
obsessed with that. They don't have it. They don't have it, but they can afford it. Whoever can
They
do that, they can hire them
they
to come and do that all day long. Do that dance move. Do that dance move. Whatever it is, right?
they think Donnie does what you're saying. They think
Correct.
that
But
goes.
I think the thing he's doing is he's bringing music back from his
That's what
venture.
they think.
He's a
Some of
retriever,
them have told him that. They have
right?
told, and some of them have made it religious, right? Some of them have taken it to a religious level and said, you're visiting, the realm of Allah or whatever,
Right.
the different factions have, but they have told him the way you create music, the way you just sing it out, or he does the mind voice stuff where he can just think it and he's like, okay, here's the drums, here's the trumpet, and he builds it and layers it, and pretty soon you've got music. Over and over, they've told him, like, whatever you're doing, you're going somewhere and getting it.
Right.
So you are right in that they have told him that you are doing something different. And that is why they have coveted what he has brought back.
I hope you enjoyed the first hour of my recent conversation with Tyme Rider. If you would like to check out the rest of the more than 3 hour episode, head on over to one of the links down below. I offer a free week at two different levels on Patreon, and there's also a promo code for a free month on Locals. Hope to see you over there. Take care.